Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Review That Book in 20 minutes or less. Can I do it? Let's give it a shot. I'm Stacey Fitzgerald, I'm a certified nutritionist, and I love to read books about health and wellness and pass on to you what I read. Today we're going to review this book, Heavy Metals Detox by James Lilley. And a shout goes out to James' family. He recently passed away, and so this review is timely in that any of you that buy this book, it will go to help support his family. So without further ado, let me jump into this great book, Heavy Metals Detox by James Lilley. So first of all, I love the book. It is really easy to read and understand, and James is funny. He is a great conversational writer, and I love that. He oversimplifies things that are difficult to understand, and I've heard it said, actually he says it in this book, I think it's Albert Einstein that said, if you can't simplify something, you don't understand it. Well, James clearly understands this topic because he makes it simple and fun and easy to understand. I'm going to put a link below this video to let you know where you can get this book, and it's going to benefit his family. So I hope you love it. All right, introduction of this book. He basically talks about what heavy metals are, how they get in and how they get out. He talks about the difference between an acute exposure and chronic exposure or accumulation, some symptoms of heavy metal toxicity, and he mentions a quote by Dr. Sherry Rogers, who says regarding disease, it always involves toxicity. Pretty amazing. In 1974, he also notes that the WHO, World Health Organization, said that 82% of degenerative disease is caused by toxic heavy metals coming from our food, our water, and our air. That is, wow, pretty convincing. He also mentions the 6 main detox pathways, which he's going to get into more in Chapter 4. All right, here we go. Chapter 1, Metals in the Home. Step 1, reduce your exposure. He goes into all the different ways that we're being exposed to heavy metals in our home and in our environment. He talks about how they can cross the blood-brain barrier, which is one of the reasons why heavy metals are so damaging. He goes into some specific heavy metals in this chapter: lead, cadmium, aluminum, mercury, and arsenic. And he gives some ways that these heavy metals affect us negatively, how they get into us, and ways to combat them. The bottom line from this chapter, he says, when our burden outweighs our ability to detox, we're going to have health problems. All right, Chapter 2 is called When Heavy Metals Become Kryptonite. In other words, overload, what he just mentioned. When what's coming in is overloading, is higher than what we're able to get out, we're going to have health issues. He tells a little bit of his personal story here. He had a toxic incident that left him in a wheelchair, and he dedicated himself to studying and learning and poured over the information and was able to recover himself, which is amazing, and then really committed himself to simplifying it. That became his goal, to simplify all he had learned and put it into one resource so people could get what took him a long time and be able to apply it in a practical way for their own healing. He mentions 3 things. 1, the substance we're exposed to, the time we're exposed to it, number 2, and 3, our ability to detox as being key in how much these heavy metals affect us. He mentions to remember that organic foods have been tested for pesticide, but not heavy metals. So just eating organic doesn't keep you from getting heavy metals into your system. He talks about our digestive load, how our liver and our kidneys are the filter for our digestive system, and brain toxicity. Really remembering that our brain doesn't have a filter like our liver and our kidneys for our digestive system. Our brain is covered with the cerebral spinal fluid and has a blood-brain barrier that keeps things from getting in. However, heavy metals can cross that blood-brain barrier and cause a lot of problems to our brains, our sensitive tissues, the pituitary gland, and he goes into all of that and how that affects our thinking and our emotions even. Another key he mentions is that heavy metals can displace minerals. They're basically fake minerals, and they trick our body into absorbing them instead of the key minerals that we need for all these different digestive enzymes. They disrupt the enzyme production in our body. Ever heard the term being mad as a hatter? Well, he explains it in this Chapter 2. Got to read the book. All right, Chapter 3, testing for heavy metals. Really key here. He explains why we should even test. He goes into 3 different types of testing that are common. Hair testing, a challenge test, which is basically taking a substance that pushes these toxins out and then measuring what comes out, which can be dangerous, he mentions, because we're loosening up all these heavy metals, and blood testing. He calls combining these is what is called a try test, and he says that's a really great way to begin, but to also remember that it doesn't show you everything, because a lot of our toxins, our heavy metals, are stored in the fat, and that's not going to be shown in those tests. He gives us another key that he mentions over and over in this book, which is to go slow. We don't want to be pushing all these toxins through our body too quickly. All right, chapter 4 is detoxification pathways, and this is where he goes into the 6 main pathways that can become sluggish: the lungs, the skin, the kidneys, the lymphatic system, the digestive system, and the liver. Just a few keys. One thing in the digestive system is it's so important to nourish, not just get things out, but put the right things in. And another key that I noted in the liver is make sure if you're taking supplements that they're clean supplements. We don't want to be in thinking we're getting better, putting more toxic metals and things into our body. Chapter 5, the missing link, sleep. He calls this the number one simplest solution. And he tells us why, because while we sleep, our brain actually shrinks a little bit, and that cerebrospinal fluid that's covering our brain is able to increase and wash our brain. We're literally being brainwashed while we sleep. So the quality of our sleep is super important, even more than the quantity. He talks about the value, ways to improve it. One thing, stop all blue lights before you go, at least a couple hours before you go to bed. All right, chapter 6 is called Pre-Tox Before You Detox. Again, he says go slow, and the more toxic you are, go even slower. He gives us some tests for testing for blocked pathways, and mentions don't stir it up until you can get it out. He gives the picture of a glass of water with dirt and sand at the bottom, and if you stir it, all that dirt and sand gets loosed into the water, but if it has no way out, all you've done is stir up a mess. So we want to really open those pathways. He gives this sentence, the 6 P's of preparation. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. I'm not saying that again. All right, key, remove all known stressors. And to remember that stressors can be physical, like injuries, infection, and inflammation. They can be chemical, like alcohol and cigarettes, mold, toxic products, medications and drugs, even our food, right? And mold. I think I said mold twice. And emotional, stress and trauma. Don't brush past that one. It's huge because our adrenal system is activated. So we want to remove these stressors, and we want to mineralize. Our body needs minerals, and remember, heavy metals mimic minerals. So things like bone broth and juicing, mineral salt. Throw away that white table salt and replace it with mineral salt. That's one way to get something bad out and something good in. He mentions several other really important things that can be helpful to get minerals in our body. Chapter 7, it takes guts to leak. So what we eat versus what we absorb, so important. You heard of leaky gut, how it can lead to food sensitivities and chronic inflammation. He gives some reasons behind this, like candida or gluten proteins and chemicals like glyphosate in our food. Did you know that the way glyphosate kills bugs is that it blows up their guts? And then we ingest it and think it's safe for our guts? Yikes. The foods we eat can either replenish minerals or deplete minerals in our body. So important what we eat and how we absorb. He recommends several different things that you can do to help your gut heal. Chapter 8 is called Stomach Acid is Strong for a Reason. This is a great chapter and super helpful. He actually says if you take away nothing else from this book, take this away as number 1, that strong stomach acid is of the highest value. So don't let that escape you. He talks about the importance of our stomach acid and why heartburn is really a misnomer, and we think we have too much stomach acid when really we don't have enough. And that lower esophageal sphincter that keeps the stomach acid, or is supposed to keep stomach acid from coming up into our esophagus, which is where we feel that heartburn, that sphincter doesn't close unless it's triggered by very strong stomach acid. So when that stomach acid isn't strong enough, that little sphincter stays open, and this acid, which is not strong enough for our stomach, but way too strong for our esophagus, comes up and we experience heartburn. So it doesn't make sense to lower stomach acid with antacids. Instead, we need to increase that stomach acid. He gives some ways to do that are super, super helpful. Really great chapter, that chapter 8. All right, chapter 9 is opening the closed detox doors. Gives a little short recap at this point. He talks about how toxins move in and around our body. He gives this great example of a garbage truck coming through your neighborhood. If you have trash to put on that garbage truck, but it's already full, so you put your trash in and it just dumps right back out all over your front yard, you're making more of a mess. So he recommends empty the garbage truck first. That's the picture of clearing out these closed detox doors. So again, don't stir up before you clean up. We've got to have a vessel to get this stuff out of our bodies. He again mentions stop stress, because stress, which activates our sympathetic nervous system, closes the doors to detox. Whereas when we have the parasympathetic nervous system activated, we come back into rest and digest mode, and those detox doors are open. We need those doors open if we're going to detox. Again, he says, don't stir yet. We've got to get those doors open. He talks about how to increase bile, which is through the liver, and to have some natural diuretics to really push some of this stuff through the kidneys. Remember, go slow, because anything you push through the kidneys is going to put stress on the kidneys. His picture of this is like a sniper. If you go slow and you use a few targeted supplements, it's like using a sniper to take out an enemy, as opposed to a shotgun method that just explodes everything into a mess. That's going too fast and too much all at one time. All right, chapter 10 he calls burly binders. And here he gives us the picture of a bouncer at a busy nightclub getting a really troublemaker guy out of there. So the bouncer is like the binder in this busy nightclub of our gut, and these troublemakers are the heavy metals. So we need a strong binder, stronger than the toxic heavy metal, to grab those guys and get them out of our gut. Key to hydrate and flush, and he goes into 6 specific binders. I'm going to mention them really quickly. Activated charcoal, bentonite clay, chlorella, modified citrus pectin, IMD, which is like purified silica, and zeolites. I'll focus on the zeolite because one of the he focuses on the zeolite and says that teaches us about how zeolites can grab on to these toxic metals and get them out of our body. And the key with the zeolite is, number one, they don't let go. They have a structure that is really strong, but they don't soak up the minerals, which is the issue with activated charcoal. One of its benefits is that it soaks up everything in the gut, but one of its problems is it soaks up everything in the gut. So it needs to be used only sporadically for maybe more of a acute toxicity, whereas for chronic toxicity, the zeolite is really the key. All right, the final chapter in this book is chapter 11, and it's called Detoxification Unleashed. So in other words, if you don't have open doors, the toxins have to be put somewhere, and they're going to go into your fat. This is why some people say they just can't lose weight. Well, the body is smarter than we realize, and it does not want to release all those toxins that are stored in the fat. So we've got to stop this exposure from coming in. But once we've done all this other stuff that we've talked about and open up these doors, we really want to get these toxins out. So this chapter is really key because it goes into 2 specific nutrients that your body can make itself. Glutathione tells you how this is important, how it works, how to increase it. It's your body's master antioxidant, detoxifier. And then this NRF2 pathway. NRF2 is a protein that's found in the body in the cells, and it upregulates this glutathione production as well as ATP, or energy production, in the mitochondria to get this stuff out of our cells. I love this. He talks about every illness is either an excess of inflammation, an excess of toxicity, a deficiency in a nutrient, or an overload of oxidative stress, high oxidative stress. Well, NRF2 helps to balance all of those. When these things are all out of whack, we want to bring this back into homeostasis. He talks about how to get NRF2 increased in your body. And the number one thing he mentions is broccoli sprouts. I have some in my refrigerator now. I just made them this week. Super, super easy. He goes into several other ways to help increase this NRF2 pathway in your body. And again, he mentions a binder. How important it is to have that bouncer who can get a hold of these toxic heavy metals to get them out of your body. So major takeaways for me were 2 big things. We need minerals, we've got to absorb them, so we've got to have a gut that's able to absorb that nice strong stomach acid. We've got to have minerals. We need to get a great source so we're not putting anything toxic in. And then we really need a great binder to get these things out once our pathways are opened. All right, so I love this book. I give it 2 thumbs up. If I had more thumbs, I'd give it more thumbs up. I think it is a fabulous handbook, and it's so easy to read and understand. I really think you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to put a link below to the book. I'm also going to put a link below to the products I use. These are the zeolite that I use, Pure Body and Pure Body Extra. They've been tested for cleanness, which is something he said in there. And it's the same zeolite that James Lilley recommends. I also use this product. I'm going to put a link to it because this is a super green juice. And that's going to have the green, this is like your stirrer. It's going to help stir up stuff, and the zeolite's going to get it out of the body. I also really recommend for the gut that you get a quality probiotic. This is personally the only one I use. And while I say I recommend, I'm going to rescind that and say this is what I use, because I am a certified nutritionist, but I haven't met with you individually, so I can't really prescribe or recommend a product. I can just tell you what I take based on my own research. So I'll put links below to try to help simplify this whole process for you. I hope you're doing great, and please send your thoughts and prayers out to James Lilley's family. Buy this book below. I think you'll love it, and I hope you all are doing super great. Until next time, take care.